It's time for Recipe of the Day. About a month ago, I used a grocery delivery service from a grocery store nearby, and they got one of my selections wrong. I had ordered a skirt steak, and instead of that, I got this pack of like 3 thin sirloin steaks that were kind of like attached to each other. Like the steaks weren't attached to each other. The packages were like individual steaks all like in a row. So I guess maybe it looked like skirt steak. I'm not really sure how it happened. But anyways, I submitted the claim to say that the mistake had been made and thought maybe somebody would come get it. I didn't really know what would happen. It seems they just credited my account and let me keep these thin sirloin steaks that I didn't really want and wasn't sure what to do with. Well, thankfully, I happen to be a food blogger, as you know, and so I went to my own site and looked for a recipe that uses sirloin steaks, and I found this older recipe that I had not made in years that I know that I like and that my kids would like, and so I made it, and that is the steaks with gravy recipe. So this recipe is for those cuts of steak that aren't really like your best grilling steak. You don't use a ribeye or a New York strip or anything like that here. Instead, a thin cut sirloin like I had, or a round steak, or any thin boneless cut. You could even use cube steaks here. I will say the recipe does not have you dredge the steaks in flour first, but you know and I know from the testing that I did with the cube steaks that actually that dredge in flour makes the steaks juicier. I'm not sure why. It almost like that flour coating sucks up some of the cooking oil or keeps in some of the juices from the steak. I don't know, but it works. So that would be a step that you could do, especially if you were going to use the cube steak here, but it might work with all of them. I haven't actually tried it with the sirloin, but now it's on my mental note to try next time. Anyhow, it is great for those sort of less expensive thin cuts of steak. It adds juiciness, having the gravy that the steaks kind of get bathed in at the end. And so it's a great thing to do if you end up with a mistaken sirloin steak order, or if you just want to try getting one of those cuts of beef that you see at the store and weren't sure what to do with. This is a great recipe. So if you are doing 4 of these steaks, they're thin, they're about 6 ounces each, you're going to need a really big skillet. And I love my massive cast iron skillet. It is perfect for this. If you don't have something that big, you might have to do it in 2 batches, which is just not as ideal here, I don't think. So you'll get out those 4 sirloin steaks and pat them dry and then season them generously all over with salt and pepper, and then get that big skillet over medium-high heat. You're going to heat some cooking oil in there. The recipe says olive oil, 2 teaspoons of olive oil, but whatever you use. I often grab my grapeseed oil. It's the one closest to my stove, and it has a slightly higher smoking point than olive oil, but also a completely neutral flavor. So sometimes I can taste olive oil when I've used it for cooking. I don't dislike it, but it has that flavor. If I don't want it in the thing that I'm making, then I use the grapeseed oil for sure. Now that oil is going to get shimmering hot really quickly because there's not very much of it and it's over medium-high heat. So as soon as it's nice and hot, you are putting those steaks in there and cooking them until they're well browned underneath, 3 to 4 minutes, and then flipping them over. Now, these steaks, we're not really trying to keep them rare or anything like that because we really do want that crust. So you are just going for nice high, medium high heat, 3-ish minutes till it's nice and brown, and then flip and do the other side. You really, I guess, want as little time as possible on the heat, but you also do want that deep brown crust, right? Okay, as soon as they're brown on both sides, transfer them to a plate to rest. Now, if this was me cooking, and it was when I made the recipe, right? While they were cooking, I would have mixed up the gravy mixture so that it is ready to go into the skillet. So while those steaks were cooking, you want to mix together a cup of beef stock with some Worcestershire sauce and some flour. Now, the recipe just has you put that all into a bowl and mix it up. I find it easier to do in a jar with a tight-fitting lid. So you pour your beef stock, 1 cup of room temperature or cold beef stock, 1 tablespoon of flour, and then the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, but I didn't put that much last time because I'm not a huge fan of actually being able to taste that, so I went with just 1 tablespoon. It is up to you whether you do the 2 or the 1. Then you put the lid on that jar and shake it, and it will become smooth. And then once your steaks come out of that pan, drop the heat down to low and pour that mixture right into the pan that you cook the steaks in, and then scrape up any brown bits from the bottom. It's going to start kind of like simmering and thickening pretty quickly because the pan is so big and it was so hot. You might even want to have some beef stock on hand on the side in case it gets too thick too fast. You can really dilute that quickly and save that situation, right? Okay, once it is the thickness that you want, give it a taste and add a little bit of salt and pepper. Then return the steaks to the pan and coat them with the gravy, kind of flipping it over, warming them through just for a minute or two, and then serve it, ideally with some mashed potatoes to coat in that delicious, luscious gravy, right? I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there, or find it in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. And hey, just a quick note. I'm on a recording hiatus right now, so for the next little while, I'm replaying episodes from the archives, including this one. If you heard me mention a holiday, a season, or something going on in my life that seemed a bit off, that's why. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're enjoying these older episodes. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.